Today, we're diving into a pretty radical experiment up on the Northern California coast. It's a place called the Sea Ranch. Now, this whole community was built around one single powerful question. How do we live in a beautiful place without completely destroying it? So let's find out how they pulled it off.
Okay, so to really get the Sea Ranch, you first have to understand the land itself. We're talking about 10 miles of coastline that's just been shaped by relentless wind and fog. It is a place of just dramatic, powerful beauty. But it is also really harsh. This is not some gentle landscape just waiting to be tamed, you know?
And that brings us right back to the central challenge, the big question. How in the world do you build a whole community in a place this special without ruining the very thing that makes it special in the first place? This was the core problem that the founders of the Sea Ranch had to solve way back in the 1960s. Their answer? It was a shared philosophy, a guiding principle that really informs every single decision they make there. It's an idea they simply call living lightly with the land.
So, what does living lightly with the land actually mean? Well, it's not about being a hermit or living completely off-grid. It's really an architectural approach that puts respecting the environment first. The goal isn't to build some huge monument to an architect's ego. It's to create a home that really understands and responds to its specific spot on the earth.
To figure out what their building should even look like, the founders didn't look to modern trends. No, they looked at the simple, honest structures that had been on this coastline for a century. The barns. I mean, these buildings were practical, right? They were built with local materials, and they were literally shaped by the wind. So the early Sea Ranch homes, they just adopted that same spirit. Simple forms, modest materials, and a really strong but quiet presence.
The Sea Ranch design manual itself says it perfectly. This is not the place for a grand architectural statement. The whole point, the crucial thing to get, is that the landscape is the main event. The architecture, it's just a supporting actor, designed to blend in and make the experience of the place better, not to dominate it.
Okay, but before you can design a building that fits in, you have to deeply, deeply understand the environment. You could say that at the Sea Ranch, the land is basically the #1 client.
This diagram shows a key principle. Buildings aren't just objects you plop down on the land. Their very shape is dictated by natural forces. The orientation is designed to capture that low winter sun for warmth. The roof lines, the walls, they're angled to deflect the strong coastal winds, which creates these sheltered outdoor spaces where you can actually hang out and enjoy being outside.
And this is definitely not a one-size-fits-all kind of approach. The architects realized pretty quickly that these 10 miles of coast are not one uniform landscape. They actually identified 4 distinct environmental zones, and building in one is completely different from building in another.
So first, you've got the ocean bluffs, super dramatic but also fragile and just exposed to everything. Then you have the meadows, which are these wide-open former grazing lands, so every home built there is highly visible. Next up is the transitional zone, which has steeper, more varied terrain. And finally, there's the hilltop forest, where the views are much more intimate and inward-looking. Each zone presents its own unique puzzle for designers. So if you get the philosophy and you've read the landscape, how do you actually translate all of that into a physical building? Well, it all comes down to some really specific principles of designing for place. It all starts with a super meticulous site analysis. Before an architect can even think about a floor plan, they're out on the site mapping everything. And I don't just mean the good views. We're talking about the path of the sun, the direction of the wind, and even what the manual calls sensory factors. You know, like the sound of the wind whipping through the trees. And this is where the whole community aspect really clicks into place. You don't just analyze your own little plot of land. You have to analyze how your home is going to impact your neighbors, both the ones that are already there and the ones who haven't even built yet. You literally map their best views to make sure you don't block them. You study how your shadows will fall on their property. It's all about being a good neighbor, but in 3-dimensional space. This comparison, I think, really gets to the heart of the difference here. So a typical developer, they might just level the land flat. But at the Sea Ranch, the house actually steps down the natural slope. And instead of maximizing the building's footprint to get the biggest house possible, the design breaks up the mass into smaller pieces to reduce its visual impact. It is a complete inversion of the conventional way we think about building. Of course, having a great vision is one thing, but protecting it over decades as hundreds of different people build their own homes, that's another thing entirely. That requires a system, a kind of rule book for harmony. This is all done through a multi-step design review. But instead of being this scary adversarial process, it's actually collaborative. It starts with a site visit with the design committee before you even start designing, just to talk about the possibilities. It's more like a journey to make sure that every new building understands and respects that shared community vision.
And that big philosophy, it translates into some very specific, very practical rules. Cars have to be screened from view. Exterior lights can't create glare so you can actually still see the stars at night. Landscaping has to use native plants, so private yards just blend seamlessly into the shared open space. It's these small details that add up to a huge collective impact.
And the result of all that analysis, all that philosophy, and all that review is a community where the buildings just don't shout for attention. They feel settled, like they truly belong there. The architecture really is secondary to the overwhelming beauty of the natural landscape.
One of the original architects, a guy named Joseph Eschrich, I think he put it best. He said that beauty isn't the goal, it's just a byproduct of solving problems correctly. And ultimately, he said people and the things they do are far more important than any building. The architecture is there to serve life, not the other way around. What a thought.
And that leaves us with a final thought to chew on. In a world of sprawling suburbs and endless look-alike houses, what could our own communities learn from this decades-long experiment? An experiment where the landscape, not the building, always comes first.